Verse 4, do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Answering a fool is responding to somebody who is saying something foolish or doing something foolish, and responding with maybe a correction, maybe some wisdom or instruction. And here Solomon is saying, don't answer a fool. Don't give them wisdom. Jesus said something similar. He said, don't throw your pearls before swine. It's an unfruitful endeavor. And so it says, lest you also be like him. It's a foolish thing to spend time and energy on something that will not bear fruit. And I think that is what is generally intended here, is don't waste your time on somebody who is not willing to hear correction. And over, that's what the proverb says about the fool, is that he will not listen to instruction. And verse 5 says this, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Wait, what's going on here? Isn't this a direct contradiction to what the previous verse just said? In verse 4 it says, do not answer a fool according to his folly. And verse 5 here says, well, you should answer a fool according to his folly, otherwise he'll think himself wise when he really isn't. And so why is there a contrast here? Why does it seem like there's a contradiction? I think in this case, the contrast is intended purposefully. These two verses are put side by side on purpose. And I think really the takeaway from here, the takeaway that we can take from this is that wisdom is a complex thing. It's not always simple and straightforward. Wisdom requires considering many variables, considering the context of our lives. It requires careful discernment. And so answering a fool can sometimes be a wise thing to do. It can sometimes be helpful. For example, if somebody is foolish, but they have acquired the humility that is needed to listen to instruction, or a fool who has a willing heart for whatever reason that maybe they didn't have before. Or maybe it's somebody who you know respects your opinion. Maybe you have that relationship and you can speak into their lives when maybe somebody else who they didn't know, they wouldn't listen to instruction from someone else, but they'll listen to you and you can reach them. And so sometimes it can be appropriate, if you consider all the variables, to give instruction to a fool, to answer them in their folly. Another example I can think of is sometimes answering the fool is not good necessarily for them because they are hard-hearted or hard-headed, but maybe there are people who are listening to the correction and they will learn from it. You know, I've watched many public debates over the years, usually on video, sometimes live. People will have formal debates about some kind of topic, does God exist, or some other type of important topic. And some people have said, you know, debates are a waste of time because nobody ever changes their mind. Have you ever seen a debate where at the end of the hour or two of debating, one of the debaters says, you've convinced me, I've completely changed my mind? That never happens, does it? Usually, even if somebody does change their mind, they're not going to do it right then, especially in front of other people, but maybe later, right? But a lot of times, I think the biggest value in a debate, and this is whether it's in an auditorium or maybe even in a video setting or on the internet, which there are a lot of useless debates, by the way, on the internet, but you can have some fruitful discussions that even if you don't change the mind of the person who is wise in their own eyes, there are other ears and eyes listening and watching who are paying attention, and they can be helped. And if somebody spouts off some foolishness and nobody addresses it, they might get sucked in. And so speaking up and addressing that foolishness, even if you know that person will not be helped, somebody who is in that sphere, who is listening in, could be helped. Another consideration when I look at this verse about wisdom is the difference between wisdom and fundamental morality. Wisdom is situational. It depends on many factors, many variables, like I said. And there can be a spectrum of good decisions when it comes to considering wisdom and foolishness. A decision might be more wise or less wise, but still be good, right? Morality, on the other hand, is something that is of an absolute nature. Right or wrong, I should say, black or white, good or evil. I think about the Ten Commandments. You shall not steal. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. We don't consider the situation and all the variables at hand when we're deciding whether we should murder someone, right? That is a black and white rule or a commandment of fundamental morality. And we should be careful not to conflate the two. And I'll give a few examples. One is an example of treating morality as if it's situational. And so somebody might say, I know the Bible says that sex is only for marriage, but we really love each other. And so you might take the situation, well, hey, in this situation, the Bible says that you should reserve sex for marriage. But we're not married yet. We still got to finish college or whatever it might be. Maybe we'll get married in the future. But, we really love each other and we're committed to each other. And so we're just going to, that rule is not really for us because we're different. We're really committed to one another. Well, you know what? If you're committed to one another, you know what you do? You get married, right? Another one. I know the Bible says don't steal, but that person that I'm stealing from has so much money, he won't miss it at all. Right? Considering these variables, the context, in certain situations, maybe it's okay to steal. And having that kind of attitude can lead to a license to sinful behavior, where we excuse sin. Now, on the other side, we can treat matters of wisdom, matters of judgment, as if they're matters of absolute fundamental morality. And so somebody might read the proverb. I think in the last few weeks we read the proverb about taking loans and how when you borrow money from someone, you give them a certain amount of power over your life. And Solomon puts it this way. He says the borrower is slave to the lender. And someone might take that and say, you know what? It's not good to be a slave. So that maybe what we'll do is we'll turn that into a sin. And we'll say it's always wrong to borrow money. And that's not correct. That's not how we should use judgment when it comes to matters of wisdom. Now, you can certainly get into trouble with borrowing money, but it's not fundamentally wrong to take out a mortgage on your home. Another quick example is sleeping in occasionally. The Bible says, hey, don't love sleep. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, and then your life is a total wreck, right? And so don't have a lifestyle in which you are lazy. But if you sleep in occasionally because you're trying to catch up on life, that's totally fine, right? And so treating matters of wisdom as if they're matters of fundamental morality really leads to a life of legalism. And, we can be legalistic against ourselves and constantly judge ourselves. Oh, I slept in this morning. Well, you were up for 20 hours straight, taking care of this or that. It's fine. Catch up on your sleep. Or we can look out at others and we can judge them based on their decisions. Oh, they spent a lot of money on that Disney vacation, and I don't think that's a really good idea. And so we judge, we look, oh, I don't think they really have, enough money to really be able to afford that. Well, you don't really know all the variables that's going on in their life. And people, people who are in this situation can make judgments for themselves. And so we need to be careful about judging people too harshly and really unwisely when it comes to matters of wisdom. Morality is about fundamental laws. Wisdom is about general principles. It's about building habits over time. And wisdom is really more of an art form. Both of them matter, but I think we need to make sure to consider that they are both different. And also, I think we need to have discernment in discerning the difference between matters of fundamental morality and matters of wisdom. Even in this, we can play a fool. I think about teenagers who might say, the Bible says not to commit sexual immorality or fornication, but hey, we're just going to smooch under the bleachers this one time. And is that technically a sin? It's not technically a sin to do that. Or, you know what, I've got a lot of chores piling up, but I'm tired. I'm just going to binge watch Netflix all weekend. It's not technically a sin. Or maybe there's a former alcoholic who decides that he's going to start drinking just one glass of wine each night, and that's certainly technically not a sin, right? Well, that's all true. Those are technically not sins, but you are technically an idiot when you do those things, right? And so we can make ourselves the fool and try to justify it by looking at the technicalities. And it's so easy to deceive ourselves, isn't it? But I think we will do well to always look in our hearts. Why are we doing something? Is it out of love? Is it a motivation to serve others, to do what's right, to do what's best for me, to do what's best for others, and to do what's best for the Lord? Or is it for another reason?